guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is an entitled people story. When my husband and I first laid our eyes on the house, we knew we had found the one. It was the largest and most impressive in the neighborhood, with a spacious backyard complete with a shed that I immediately claimed as my own personal space. Everything seemed perfect. The home sale was approved by the HOA, and we were issued a letter stating that there were no violations. However, things took a turn for the worse when the former owners broke into our house just 24 hours after we took possession of it. They claimed that some of the abandoned property still belonged to them and proceeded to try and take it back. We were in disbelief. How could they think that they still had a right to this property? Worried about potential break-ins, I spoke to the security guard at the entrance of our gated community. He promised to deactivate the former owner's gate codes and even offered to provide me with security camera footage for the police. I felt a bit more secure knowing that someone was looking out for us. But then, the guard dropped a bombshell. He warned me that the HOA had a long-standing feud with the former owners over the shed in our backyard. Apparently, they had gone toe-to-toe with the HOA over the issue, and it had only been resolved after 3 years and numerous lawyers. The guard told me that they might come after us for the shed as well. At first, I didn't think much of it. Surely, they wouldn't give us a hard time over something that had already been settled. But then, not one, but 2 different neighbors warned me that we might have trouble with the HOA over the shed. I started to get anxious. My fears were confirmed when an inspector from the county showed up on our doorstep. He told us that there had been an anonymous complaint about code violations and that our shed was in violation of county codes as there was no permit for it. I was outraged. How could someone do this to us? The inspector seemed to take pleasure in telling us that we would need to fill out a form and pay $50 to the county to obtain a permit. He also let slip that the anonymous complainant was someone who had a reputation for being difficult to deal with, someone he referred to as Mr. Little Man Syndrome. It was clear that this person had a personal vendetta against us and was trying to cause trouble. Despite my anger, I filled out the form and paid the fee, and soon enough we had the permit we needed to keep our shed. I was relieved that we wouldn't have to deal with the HOA after all, but I couldn't help feeling frustrated that someone had tried to make trouble for us over something so trivial. In the end, though, everything turned out okay. I made a new friend in the code enforcement officer and even managed to laugh about the situation in retrospect. The shed was officially code compliant and untouchable by the HOA. It was a small victory, but it was ours. But then, just when we thought everything was settled, another twist came our way. A new neighbor moved in next door, and she had a personal vendetta against us for some reason. She made it her mission to make our lives difficult, complaining about our yard, our fence, and even our shed. We couldn't believe it. Had we somehow managed to attract all the neighborhood troublemakers? Despite our best efforts to reason with her, she continued to cause trouble. It was clear that we needed to take action if we wanted to keep our home and our shed. We consulted with lawyers and even considered moving, but in the end, we decided to stay and fight. It was a long and difficult battle, but we ultimately prevailed. Our neighbor eventually moved out, and we were able to enjoy our home and our shed in peace. We learned a valuable lesson: that sometimes, things don't always go according to plan, and that we need to be prepared for unexpected challenges. But we also learned that we are strong and resilient, and that we can overcome even the toughest obstacles. Over the years, we have made many more memories in our home and our shed. We have hosted countless gatherings with family and friends, celebrated holidays and milestones, and even started a small business out of our shed. It has truly become our own personal sanctuary, a place where we can escape the stresses of daily life and just be ourselves. Looking back on that initial incident with the former owners and the HOA, it's hard to believe that it caused us so much stress and anxiety. But in a way, it was a blessing in disguise. It taught us to stand up for ourselves and to fight for what we believe in. And it showed us that, no matter what challenges come our way, we can always find a way to overcome them. In the end, our shed may just be a small structure in our backyard, but it represents so much more. It represents our determination, our resilience, and our unwavering commitment to our home and our community. And for that, we will always be grateful. The next story is titled Heavy Metal Finance. Quite a few years ago now, in the late 1990s and very early on in my career, I used to work for a company that helped customers of certain retail stores manage their finances. My role was as a sort of compliance officer, ensuring that the staff who dealt with customers were following the rules. If they messed it up, it was a big problem, and could potentially impact the customer's credit score, result in them defaulting on payments, and even end up in court. I took my job pretty seriously. The company was not particularly well run from a management perspective. They'd made a lot of money very quickly, and had grown from a handful of people in a garage to a 4-story office building in the CBD within the space of a year and a half. There wasn't a great deal in the way of policy or process framework, so I had to develop a lot of the tools to do my job myself. This involved some programming, a basic system to track what I was doing, linked to the extensive rule set, and automate some of the more tedious reporting. It would also track how long I was spending on each task, so that I could see about which elements I could streamline. Now, I was quite proud of this system, and called it Hendrix, as I am a massive Jimi Hendrix fan, and it used to play about 5 seconds of the instrumental version of Little Wing when it started up. As I had my own little room, cupboard, this never used to annoy anyone. I can geek out about that type of stuff. At this point, before corporate IT became rather more rigid, I used to write a lot of my own tools. I was the only person who was using Hendrix, and it was a tool just for me. My manager, the archetypal middle manager, decided that because it allowed you to quickly reference which rules applied to which situation, it should be rolled out to all staff. Now, I had previously considered this, but I argued that I couldn't guarantee that it would be fit for task, because I designed it for my own use, and I'd need to make some changes first. But he rolled it out anyway without me even getting a chance to tweak it. He got a Team Player of the Week award for introducing a tool to make life easier for frontline staff. In his acceptance speech, this was a big rah-rah thing each week for the company, he thanked his manager. I didn't even get a mention. Then, 2 weeks later, he realized that I'd been recording how long I had been working on certain tasks within the program. Now, I'd realized fairly quickly that this part of the program was a little too detailed, and I didn't really care too much about every single task within each incident. So I just used it to record how long I spent on the entire incident, rather than each part of the incident. My manager invited me to a meeting about Hendrix, no details given, and I attended thinking it was going to be a list of requested features. Only to find out that the head of HR was there, and I was being given a written warning for falsifying timekeeping. Because each customer interaction was a certain length, my manager had decided that this was what I should be recording, and not how long I was spending listening to, analyzing, checking, and reporting on the interaction. Remember, this is a tool that I had designed for my own use, and it was not being used to calculate how much I was being paid, or whether I was doing enough work during the day or not. There was nothing in place for that at all. I had not made the records public, he'd found them in a file on the server that only he and I had access to. Nobody else was supposed to even have this tool. I argued this, and was told that it wasn't up to me, and I was getting a warning regardless. It got really quite heated and unpleasant, though I got the impression that the head of HR was a little embarrassed about the whole thing. They said, however, that if I wanted to consult a lawyer, I was quite within my rights to do so. It was at this point that I was rather smugly able to state that I could get 2 lawyers there within the hour. As both my parents were practicing, and my mother was, in point of fact, an employment lawyer. I realize that this is a bit of a deus ex machina, but it only has partial bearing on the story. Suddenly there was a completely different attitude from my manager. There was an attempt to roll back the issue and turn it into a suggestion that perhaps I should be a bit more careful with my timekeeping in future, but I was pretty angry at this point. I pointed out that my software had been rolled out to all staff against my wishes. I was told that this wasn't up to me, as it was company intellectual property, until I advised them that I'd written it in my own time, at home on my own computer. It was plugging into the official government rule set, and not the corporate intranet one. I had not confirmed it, fit for general release, at all. I had received special dispensation from IT to install it on a single work on a computer, mine. And I would require them to pay a license fee for anything beyond this. To be fair, this would have been tied up in court for a long time, and I've got no idea whether I'd have been successful, so in the end I relented. If they wanted to use Hendrix, well, I guess they could. I just made sure that Little Wing would play for 1 second longer on startup for every week the software was in use. Then I quit the following Monday, and was working for another company by the Monday after that. 3 or 4 months later I got a phone call from my former manager asking to come, fix the problems with my software. He hung up when I quoted him my consultant fees. I don't know why IT weren't able to figure it out, it was just a setting in a text file. Not at all hard to find. A friend who remained in the company tells me they continued to use Hendrix for a whole year. The mornings in the call center were apparently horrifying, with Little Wing playing for around a minute every time someone started a new shift. Sometimes it would play on 20 computers at once, few seconds apart, on tinny PC speakers that they were unable, due to IT, to mute. The next story is titled My Grandma Tries to Justify My Stepmom. Hello again Reddit, I hope you all are doing well on this fine evening. I have a story that just makes me angry to think about. I was over at my grandma's house helping her with some honeydews, and we got talking about a couple of years ago when I was in the hospital for appendicitis. Context: I was 16 and just an average teenager grabbing Monster Energies every chance I got, building a somewhat healthy addiction to caffeine, as every teenager does at some point. This happened on Monday a month before spring break. This is important. I woke up in the night and ran to the bathroom, about to vomit. When I was done and checked my face for blood, I saw my vomit was pure pink. Not like I ate something bad, more like it had basically been on my stomach acid. I didn't think much of it as I'd assumed it was normal and I'd just eaten a bad strawberry yogurt. I laid back in bed and my stomach immediately began to feel like I was being stabbed and slowly being cut open with no anesthesia. I began crying, it was so bad. I couldn't move, that only made it worse, so I grabbed my headboard on my bed and began banging it on the wall while crying for my dad or stepmom to come and get me. Almost an hour later my dad checks on me worried sick. But he took one look at me and kind of slowed down. Probably relieved I wasn't dying. I was, but neither of us knew that. My dad told me to stay home and rest. The next few days were hell. I was taken to a general doctor, but he said it was only constipation. Now I've had constipation before, and it was nothing like this. At least with constipation I was able to walk around. But my dad and stepmom, despite my pleas, didn't take me to a hospital until 5 days later when my dad saw me collapse and writhing with pain on the floor, bawling instantly. He rushed me to a hospital down the road and I was immediately given morphine and put into an ambulance to be taken downtown. In less than a few days I was treated somewhat. They were trying to narrow down what could have caused this, but at least the pain was gone. A drain and morphine helped a lot. My mom, my real mom, burst through the door and took one look at me and immediately began crying. She relieved than anyone that I was okay. Over the next week my mom was with me for my lunches and sat through most of my doctor's talks. My stepmom came in on the mornings, and did her work, tried to force me to eat, and tried to get me to do more than I could with my malnourished body. I lost a good 75 pounds in 1 week. My stepmom ridiculed me non-stop during her visit, saying I should have just gotten up and gotten them rather than make my dad get up and find me. She also tried making the situation better by saying, "At least I'm here for you and not your real mom. She doesn't know anything about your medical history." And on and on. My dad was usually home during the day taking care of my sister. My stepdad was too. But he didn't have a choice. My stepdad is old, and has a very high risk, so I completely understood why he never came to see me. Everyone on my mom's side and stepdad's side was worried sick, texting and calling me making sure I was okay. But if the conversation was longer than 5 minutes, my stepmom would yell at me to get off the phone while she was trying to work. I just told her that it's my family calling to make sure I'm okay. No one on her side ever even bothered to show up. They didn't even know I was hospitalized. My stepmom conveniently forgot to tell them, like usual. It was hell when she was there, but after the surgery, she just stopped showing up at all. It'd be my dad from night till noon, then my mom from noon till night. I went into surgery at the end of the week. All was better, for now. As I was saying all of this to my grandma, she made excuses for my stepmom, saying, well, she just didn't want to break down in front of me. I called BS because if she really cared she wouldn't have ridiculed me for not being able to move. The next story is titled My Town Banned Plastic Bags. Some customers were not happy. I'm an assistant front-end manager, recently promoted to full-time, and given a bit more authority as a result, in a chain grocery store, and as the title says, my town banned plastic grocery bags. The ban went into effect yesterday, and I had to explain it to customers. This is the story of one particularly unpleasant one. I was working the close shift and one of my cashiers called me over at the request of the customer, an older lady. She asked me to tell her why there were no plastic bags at the register. After the fact I asked the cashier, He had tried to explain it multiple times and she wasn't buying it. I explained that town law no longer permitted us to use them. So, what am I supposed to do then? I pointed to the stacks of paper on the register and told her she's also welcome to bring in reusable bags. Well, I don't like paper, it's too hard to carry. I certainly didn't vote for the change. Well, ma'am, we also have reusable bags for sale if you'd like to use those instead. I'm not paying for bags, that's ridiculous. I want plastic. So, what are you going to do for me? Nothing. Cue shocked look, and the loud gasp of someone who's never been told no in her life. If you won't accept paper, and you won't buy a bag, what do you expect me to do? Break town law and give you plastic? I mean, we can just put the unbagged groceries in your cart, but there's nothing else we can do. So, she asks to see my manager. Who tells her the same thing. She did settle on paper, bagged lightly to make it easier to carry, but glared at us the whole time. As she was leaving, she said, "I'm shopping at competitor. Next time, they know how to take care of their customers. They won't be using plastic either." I replied, as she walked out angrily. My manager actually told me I handled it well, so I felt pretty good since it was basically the first time I got to use my new position's authority to essentially tell off a customer instead of caving to their demands. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.